Alrighty everyone, welcome back to the next episode of BigBangTheoryRL for Wednesday, September 12th. Even though it's 1 o'clock, well, 2 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, September 13th, 2012. You know the way things go. Basically, I spend all night long working, and some of the times when I get to shoot, it's not the day that it was before in terms of the numerical day, but I'm still up working. Anyways, I went through the video that I produced yesterday, the documentary. As I say this over and over and over again in every video, if you actually watch the videos, I state that I'm a researcher. This is behind the scenes research. While it isn't entertaining, I guess classified under entertainment because it's a reality show based, not based, but similar to Big Bang Theory. Big Bang Theory is a fictional portrayal of four nerds, astrophysicists, living together, and this is the real life version of this. A lot of the work I do here is academic, a lot of it's research based, and I share the research that I do with you, and it's going to be going up on Physics TV. This is where everything's going towards. It's going towards Physics TV, and this is where it should be. The problem that I've recently had, and this happened again, is that YouTube has flagged the video for copyright infringement, even though it's supposed to be within fair use. Because it's in, if you watch it, you can clearly see that it's a document. I think that it's a document. You can see that it's within research, and the law itself says that fair use is allowed. What's happened is that YouTube, with the Digital Copyright Act, has become very racist, and they're going after videos, and this is what I put down, videos that are not part of the mainstream, or that can be flagged as different in terms of being against the normal ideas, can be easily, if you're criticizing something, can be easily flagged and pulled off of YouTube, because someone all they have to do is flag this. Well, just think of what date it is. It's after 9/11. This video is made on 9/11. I mean, do people really care about 9/11 anymore? Is 9/11 simply lip service now? I mean, if you're not going to protect the freedoms within the Constitution, who cares about 9/11? This is the whole thing now, is that we've lost so much American freedom that 9/11 is now meaningless. When you have infringements on, and this is what the Constitution says. The Constitution states clearly that no Congress shall create no law infringing on the right to freedom of speech. And yet, what does this DCA law do? It does exactly what the Constitution says it shouldn't do. It infringes on the right to freedom of speech. Like saying, you can't say that, you can't show this, you can't, that's part of free speech. And if you infringe on it, by law, that's a violation of the Constitution. But nobody really seems to care. YouTube doesn't care. YouTube hasn't gone and fought for the rights and freedoms under the Constitution in wherever it is, whoever's making this claim for this. And the result is that we've gone from being proud of the United States in World War I and World War II, being proud Americans, being proud of our Constitution, being proud of our freedoms, to not caring about it at all. I mean, so if no one cares about our freedom, if no one cares about our flag stands for, then who cares about 9/11? I mean, if 9/11 is about our freedom, it's about our ability to stand up against world tyranny, well, that's simply lip service if you're not going to stand up for your own rights and freedoms. And YouTube is guilty of this. And here's where they're guilty. I'm talking about the genocide created by being done by the Muslims against the Christians in the Middle East. Not only that, and I've watched TV shows on this, documentaries coming out, and this is now the groupthink coming out of universities. This is where the criticism initially came from. That in universities now they're trying to whitewash the genocide, the Christian genocide that occurred in the Middle East, and is still going on now, as being the Christians adopting Islam. And that's not the case. All you have to do is go into history to see exactly what happened. Go actually read what was going on at the time. Go look at the massacres that occurred in Turkey against the Armenians and all this. And not only the Armenians, but you have the Pundi, you have the Cappadocian Greeks, you have the Christians in Syria, you have the Christians in Lebanon, you have the Christians in Egypt. Look at what happened to the Christians in Egypt. If you look at all these countries and you see that these Christians are a minority, you need to understand that these Christians are not European Christians. They're original Middle Eastern Christians, and they're from a Christianity that is older than European Christianity. And what you're seeing there, that you have a 10% minority now, is you're seeing the results of a genocide. And when YouTube enacts its copyright laws on cultural events that come out from there, that have been taken, have been stolen during this genocide, is the exact same thing as if someone had gone in and taken Nazi art that had been stolen from the Jews who were put in the concentration camps and started selling it online openly. This is art that we had stolen. It's the exact same thing. Genocide is genocide. It doesn't matter whether you're a Jew, you're a Greek, or whatever you are. Genocide is genocide, and you should not be profiting from this. And yet, this is exactly what YouTube and the DCA is doing. The DCA is profiting, in many cases, from genocide. It's taking music and thoughts and ideas and art that was grown in a culture that was repressed, that was being oppressed, that was being eliminated, and then locking it away and saying, you can't have your culture. You have to pay X amount of dollars for this. Well, who said I had to pay X amount of dollars for my culture? Particularly when it's coming through a filter of genocide. I mean, why should these companies be profiting from the genocide? From the genocide of these particular groups? Why should they be profiting? Because most blues songs and rock and roll, which is based on blues, comes from slavery. Why should a company say, "Oh, I can profit from this," and the law says, "Oh, well, you can do this, profit from slavery. You can profit from this racism, and no one never mind what happened in the past. Don't worry about paying for what you owe." I mean, this is stealing. If I'm stealing something, if you're stealing, if stealing a song and singing something like that is wrong, then it's wrong to steal it from those who are from the grave. It's wrong to steal it from those who were enslaved. It's wrong to steal it from those who have been oppressed. It's wrong to steal it from those who have been victims of genocide. And this is something that is completely lost on YouTube. There has been no mention of this, except in my videos. Nobody else has mentioned this, and really the connection with free speech. There's very little mention on YouTube of being able to have free speech on YouTube. And it doesn't matter what this is for. They'll go and block and tag videos. Even kids sharing and making their own videos. They're trying to do something creative and innovative with their stuff. They're trying to play on YouTube. And they're trying to learn from it. Can't do that. DCA rules. And they get flagged. As I stated earlier, that we're looking at YouTube and the violation of DCA. So, and the violation of free speech with the DCA. So I'm here on the government archive. I'm here at the Charters of Freedom. This is the making of the Charters, Declaration, the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and so on and so forth. Here's the Charters of the Freedom, and as we go down further, we see that it's the Bill of Rights here. We've got the preamble to the Bill of Rights, the Bill of Rights itself, and we come down to, and we hear now the First Amendment. This is the First Amendment here, and this is sort of what we'll call the First Amendment to the Constitution. And it says here, Congress, we'll do this here, Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble, and to petition the government for redress of grievances. So let's read this with the parts that are particular to this issue, and that's free speech here. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting, Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. And that means anything that you express, anything that's sung, anything that's a picture, anything that you hear, anything that you see, these things are all protected under the freedom of speech. And they're often used when the government tries to censor something in the movies or on TV. What do you hear? Oh, they're censoring our stuff. It's about free speech. It's about, you can't censor this, you can't censor that, because it's about free speech. That's what you'll hear from them. Now, they've turned around completely different with the DCA. Complete U-turn, complete 180 degrees, and say now that you can't say this, you can't say that, you can't show this, you can't show that, because it violates the copyright law. In other words, the copyright law restricts and restrains what can and can't be said, and how it can and can't be said. In other words, your rights to freedom of speech and of the press have been sharply curtailed. I'll give an example here. Let's say you do a video, and your video here is on the difference between cultures, between the Middle Eastern cultures, the Eastern cultures, and the Western cultures. And you use content from the internet that demonstrates this. Now, normally under the law, you're supposed to be able to allow, this is what they call the Fair Use Clause, you're supposed to be able to use this stuff. You're supposed to be able to be freely able to do this without being blocked, without being flagged, without being tagged, and so on and so forth. Yet, when we come to the video here that I just uploaded, it says here, it says, disputed third-party match. And so when you go to the disputed third-party match, and that video's been flagged by YouTube, it says here, your video may include copyright and content. Disputed claims here, and it tells you what the two different things are. And I had used a video from MIA, which is basically we call it a modern music video that's put to basically Arabic tunes, and they do it out in the desert, and in terms of the video. And you can see in here in the music the history of the Middle East in there, so you can go back and check it up against not only I took something that was more specific to the Middle East that hasn't reached the West. MIA Bad Girls has reached the West, and I used the next video to compare it to would be this is called Baby Fan or Baba Fan, and this is a advertisement aimed directly at the Middle East for a voice over IP company, and it's for Middle Eastern audiences. And again, it uses old village music to sort of get this message across, and I use that in comparison to the third video that's in there, but the third video wasn't flagged because it was an open source, it was public domain, it was an old movie, an old musical movie from the Middle East starring Fairuz that showed a village scene. In other words, they brought village music up, and you could see it, and you could compare all three videos and see how the culture of the Middle East sort of emerges. And this is what the whole content of the video was all about. And no one actually even watched this video. This was probably flagged and tagged by a machine, so there was no actual human being looking at this. And so what happens here, it says here, I disputed this,
And it says your dispute is waiting a response by when? The 10th month in the 12th day. So I have to wait until October 12th in order to hear whether or not I'm allowed to have this. In other words, my freedom of speech has been squelched and turned off, been restricted unconstitutionally because someone doesn't like what I said and how I expressed it. This is a violation. This is a direct violation of the Bill of Rights. A direct violation. So it says here, as a result, your account has been penalized and is not in good standing. So I clicked on, okay, see what's not in good standing. Well, here it is. Here, there it says not in good standing. There's community guidelines, good standing. Copyright strikes, good standing. ID claims, not in good standing. So, in other words, my account is not in good standing. It says, please read the copyright notices. So I go over to the copyright page, and it does have a whole copyright page here, on the copyright center here. And I go in and I clicked on users, and what did I see? Oh, do I have a strike against my account? Yes, I have a strike against my account. I'm not in good standing. And what does it say here? For users, right down here, for users who have successfully completed copyright school, a copyright strike may expire 6 months as long as no additional copyright notifications are received during that time. In other words, if you go to the re-education camp, just the way they have in the socialist countries who don't have free speech, you're allowed to remove the strikes against your sins against the DCA are now removed, they're absolved, and you can be in good standing again within the YouTube community. And as you read further down, they talk about this whole bit here on how to manage copyright material, and they suggest, well, if you want to be in good standing, one suggestion is we recommend that you remove your video. In other words, if the content isn't what they're happy with, they want you to squelch and censor yourself so that you're in good standing with the community. In other words, we're no longer supporting the Constitution. We're no longer supporting the freedom of speech. We're no longer supporting the rights of Americans. We don't care about that. We don't care about the number of people who died on 9/11. We're going to support our own socialist ideals, and we're going to go with that. And it says here, YouTube takes copyright infringement very seriously. In other words, they take violating free speech very seriously now. And this is what it says here. Anyone who takes, and then YouTube says it, anyone who takes copyright infringement very seriously takes freedom of speech, the infringement of freedom of speech, very seriously. In other words, they are people who are standing against the United States. They're standing against the ideals of freedom, and they are standing against the people who died on 9/11. If people who died on 9/11 died for our freedom, if this is a stance of freedom against tyranny and oppression, and you stand against the American ideals, then you stand against the people who died on 9/11. It's that simple. All right? It is automated, and this sort of gives you an idea of what's going on here. Right? It talks about the ID system down at the bottom here. Automated identifications made through our content ID system are separate from the copyright infringement notification. That means you may have comment that you do not have permission to use, or whether or not it's identified by content ID. May be subject to strikes in the future. In other words, they're admitting here that they've put this flagging system, the censorship, on autopilot. And now it's flagging everything, whether or not it's legal or not legal. And in other words, first of all, the copyright law shouldn't even exist. If you're looking at the Bill of Rights, and if you respect the Bill of Rights, if the United States still has that Constitution in place, then the Bill of Rights says Congress shall make no law abridging the right of freedom. And this law does exactly that. And this law ignores the Constitution. And here we are here. The the automated system that does the exact same thing, and you see it YouTube, no one cares. They don't care that the rights and freedoms have been abridged. They don't care that they've been restricted. They don't care that the people in 9/11 died for nothing, because they don't care about our flag. They don't care about the ideals of freedom. They don't care that we're in a social system now. And the thing is, yeah, proponents of the law will say, "Oh, but the DCA does not restrict the rights of freedom of the press and stuff like that. You can you can comment, criticize on anything in there. You can embed content if it's academic for research. That's called the fair use clause. But this system doesn't take that into account. It doesn't take fair use into account. And what it does is, by putting the date the way they did, let's go back to the date here. The date here is October 12th, 2012, which is more than a month away. They're censoring the content. This is a violation of This is a violation of the Constitution, and it speaks volumes about who YouTube is and what they represent. And then if you go to and look at, and I finally clicked on the YouTube school, it says the Copyright School, right? It says here, you can go to Copyright School. This is the re-education camp. And it comes up here, and it says here, it goes through this whole thing here, and it says here on the Copyright School, the following items are not protected by copyright: videos, people, photographs, and musical works. Well, obviously, people the answer would be people. But the thing is, what's protected by the Bill of Rights under free speech, and this has been proven under the Hustler case in terms of the obscenity laws, when you have the People v. Larry Flint in terms of pornography, and it was ruled that the pornography was free speech, and that censoring it, that magazine, was indeed an infringement of the rights to free speech. Well, the thing is that that magazine has photographs. It could contain musical works. It could contain videos, and it certainly does now on the internet, because internet is simply a means of publishing multimedia. It's a publishing platform. The internet is just the way the platform for publishing literary works, photographs, writing, musical works. All of that is protected by the DCA in terms of that you can't copy it, but at the same time, the court case was very clear that it's also free speech. In other words, the DCA knowingly stands directly against the Constitution. And so the thing is, you've got to sort of think to yourself, and this is sort of where the question comes up, because it's now the anniversary of 9/11, or 1 or 2 days afterwards, that if you really cared about what happened on 9/11, I saw all this comments and stuff, floaty stuff coming out about how 9/11 affected me, where I was on 9/11. Okay, now question here: have you stood up for your rights and freedoms? YouTube people, and you're on the bench there, you're reading this stuff and watching this stuff. Have you violated the Constitution? If you violated the Constitution, then you do not care what happened on 9/11. You're spitting on the graves of those who've died to fight for our rights and freedoms. And there's nothing more that can be said about this. If you're an actor, an actress, or a musician, or you're a media mogul, and you stand up and say you're for human rights, and you're for more freedoms and for expression, artistic expression. If you stand up and don't say anything against the DCA, if you don't say anything against the DCA, and you allow this to occur, you're lying. You're a hypocrite, because the DCA removes the rights of freedom of speech. It limits the rights of freedom of speech. It severely squelches what can be said, particularly when you're talking about dissenting opinions or differing opinions. That's being censored, that's being shut out because of the DCA. And if you don't stand up against the DCA, you're hypocrites. You're hypocrites. You mean nothing. And so, I'll leave you with this thought here before we move into the final section. It is very easy to lose our rights and freedoms if we don't take care of them. Rights and freedoms have to be earned, and they were fought for and died for with the blood of people who cared about the stuff. And now, less than a generation later, we've stopped caring about this. We don't care that the U.S. freedoms are gone. We don't care what's happening at the airport. None of this matters to anybody anymore. And because of this, no matter what people say, because of their actions, you don't really care about what happened on 9/11. 9/11 really doesn't make a difference to anybody. It's like nothing ever happened. And if you want to keep spitting on the graves of those who died for rights and freedoms, then keep following the Nazi path, keep being a socialist, keep being a communist, and keep following the DCA, keep oppressing people. And that's all I have to say on this particular part right now.
The YouTube, and I'm talking about the media Nazis, and I'm calling everybody in the media right now who's a celebrity, anyone who's a celebrity, an actor, an actress, or in the media industry, you're all Nazis. You are behaving like Nazis, so you are Nazis. And you should not be benefiting from genocide. You should not be benefiting from racism. You should not be supporting genocide, and you should not be supporting racism. And you are. When you flag and go in and flag, and you violate the free speech, U.S. Constitution, you violate free speech, and only the United States had free speech. Every other country had privileged speech. No country in the world but the United States had free speech. And the United States no longer has free speech. It has what everybody else has. It's joined the international community under the UN, where people now have privileged speech. That means as long as the government approves what you say, you can say it. If the government does not approve of what you say, you cannot say it. This is a fundamental betrayal of American ideals, is a fundamental betrayal of free speech, is a fundamental betrayal of individual freedom, and this is what the United States stood for. And I think this makes Obama a traitor, and if Romney supports this, this makes him a traitor. If you're a Republican and you talk about following the Constitution to the letter, and you support the DCA, you're a hypocrite. The DCA is a fundamental violation of free speech, and is a fundamental violation of the American Constitution. And the fact that YouTube is making so much money off of this, and is doing so well, and has not taken any chance, any opportunity to defend American ideals, to defend American freedom over its interests and profits, speaks volumes. And the fact that very few people have spoken on this, and spoken on this issue, means that they really don't care about what happened at 9/11. Everything they say about 9/11 is all lip service, it's all hype, it's all rhetoric. Because if they really cared, they'd stand up and say no to the DCA. There would be an uproar in the United States about the DCA. There would be an uproar about what's going on at the border with the transportation, the TSA too. Americans seem to have lost their ideals on what freedom should be. They have lost their ideals and have given up on the ideals of American freedom. The United States and Americans are no longer fundamentally American. They're now fundamentally socialist. That means they believe in social ideas. They no longer believe in free speech, but they believe in social speak, social justice, and social idealism. This means the United States of America that we knew about and that we fought for in the Cold War is fundamentally dead. Now, I'm one American. I'm an information pirate. I'll say this particularly, that I'm an information pirate because I stand for free speech. I will not back down on free speech. And the thing is that I say this to any Hollywood celebrity out there who's been parading around talking about humanity and human rights and stuff like this. If this is very easy for you to do, to stand up on this DCA issue and eliminate the DCA. You can eliminate PIPA, you can eliminate SOPA, you can eliminate all these things, these risks and tramplings of our freedoms. This can all be eliminated if you stood up and said so. But it's ironic that the very media industry, the ones who stand up and say, oh, what about the small guy, what about this Africa, what about this, what about that, and have all these causes, these so-called humanitarian causes. They're the ones who pushed for the DCA. You're the ones who created this draconian law. You're the one who put in the Nazi police to go around and patrol and inform on people for what they have to say. So as your behavior is like the Nazis, you are Nazis. Media people, you're Nazis. And if you don't want to be Nazis, then very simple, stand up and fight against the DCA. And tell any company who follows with the DCA that, well, yes, they may take the DCA seriously, but you're now betraying the United States. You're betraying the image of 9/11. You're betraying the rights and freedoms embedded in the Constitution. And that this is wrong. And if you don't do this, this speaks volumes of really who you are. This speaks large volumes of who you really are. So I'm going to say this here like that, and I don't expect that any celebrity is going to ever stand up and say this. I don't think they'll risk going against or losing their paychecks to do this. And it's not that they're going to lose a lot of their paychecks. It's just the ones who initially stand up will do that, will have that happen, because the industry is so much like the Nazis that they will destroy anyone who dares to go against them. But you basically made a fool of yourself. What you say, anything you stand for, all the causes you stand for, that's all bullshit. You're all bullshit. And YouTube, you should be ashamed of yourself. And if there's anyone on the YouTube desk who controls copyright infringement, you're now part of the Nazis. You're now a genocide. You're now supporting genocide, and you're now a racist. So, congratulations to you. I will say this specifically, so there's no minced words here. If you're a Democrat and you support these laws that have been going on, these socialist laws and socialist Obama, you're not an American anymore. You're a traitor. And if you're, this is to the Republicans now, if you do not support individual rights, you do not support individual freedoms as embedded in the U.S. Constitution, you too are traitors. You don't deserve to be in Congress. And don't think that this is going to be lost. That no one's going to notice this. It's going to have an impact on the United States. Socialism is socialism, whether it's on the left from the communists, or socialism on the right from the Nazis. It's the same thing. And the United States is not a socialist country. So if you're a Republican and you think socialism on the right, you're a traitor. If you're a Democrat and you've identified yourself with the social left, you're a traitor. You're not Americans, both of you. So I hope that this may change things. As I said, I'm going to be adding in another video showing what's actually going on. And I'm going to continue producing documentaries. So that's what's going to happen here. And I will see you probably next episode. Alright, take it easy.
Welcome to the library, and I am the librarian.
I am the professor. And professor of what? Professor of physics.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light.
Free speech rules here at Democratic Earth.